Back in September of 2022, Apple introduced the first Apple Watch Ultra, and the goal was to basically make a more rugged version of the Apple Watch Ultra, and they succeeded. It was made of titanium, it had a sapphire crystal display, and while the bands were admittedly more expensive than the regular Apple Watch bands, they were pointed at a very specific demographic, and they did their job very well. There were other benefits too, like this being the biggest Apple Watch up to this point at 49 millimeters with a bigger and brighter display and a bigger battery. However, there was a disadvantage, which was that there was only one version, and this version was the most kitted out you could get it with all the things I just mentioned, plus a cellular option, and it was $800. But at this point, that first Apple Watch Ultra is now well over a year old, and we also have a second generation Apple Watch Ultra that's taken its place. And that means the Gen 1s have started to make their way onto the used market. And depending on their condition, you can find them for a little more than an Apple Watch SE in terms of price, or a little more than an Apple Watch Series 9 in terms of price. So as somebody who has had an Apple Watch Ultra Generation 1 since it first came out and has pretty much been wearing it and using it every single day since then, I want to talk to you about what it's like to use an Apple Watch Series 1 well over a year on and what to look for if you're going to buy a used one. So let's dive in. So first off, like I said earlier, this was meant to be the most durable of all the Apple Watches, and I feel like my general use case for every Apple Watch I've owned is a perfect testing ground for the durability of this watch, because no matter which version or which generation of the Apple Watch I owned, I would pretty much never take it off, even when I was doing things where I probably should have. I mean, obviously I would wear the Apple Watch while doing things like working out, which makes sense because there's a fitness app built in and Apple seems to be kind of pointing the Apple Watch more towards the fitness crowd, but I would also wear it in more unorthodox scenarios like working on my car. And this would sometimes result in scratching the aluminum or scratching the display itself on things like the engine block or head or exhaust manifold of my car, or, my favorite example, drowning my Apple Watch Series 7 in motor oil when I was changing the oil in my car. But to be fair to the Apple Watches I owned before this one, they all held up pretty well, and I only ever broke one of them. Though by the time I upgraded, they usually were pretty scratched up either on the display or on the aluminum chassis, or both. When I did upgrade from my last Apple Watch to the Ultra, the only difference in my wearing habits was that I wore it for longer periods of time because of the longer battery life, but everything else stayed the same. I still worked on my car while wearing it, I still wore it to the gym. Nothing else changed, and when it comes to wear and tear on this watch, it looks pretty much as good as the day I took it out of the box, albeit a bit dirtier, but a nice clean can usually take care of that. So generally when it comes to wear and tear, even over a year on, this thing has held up surprisingly well. And I feel like if I did do some more extreme stuff like Apple showed in their promos, like rock climbing or swimming and diving, maybe it would show a little more dirt and grime and scratches, but for the general day-to-day with the occasional heavier use, I wouldn't be super worried about this thing wearing out, which means that if you're looking for a used one, aesthetics may also not be a concern on the used market because, well, unless you're buying one from a rock climber or a diver or somebody who deliberately abused their Apple Watch Ultra, like dragging it behind a car, which I saw in a couple videos, I wouldn't really be worried about how these things age physically, at least. The watch bands, however, are a bit of a different story. I know I said that these are more rugged than the regular Apple Watch bands, which is true. If I put my regular Apple Watch bands through some of the things that I put these through, they'd probably be destroyed, but that doesn't mean these stay perfect at least as the watch itself. The only Apple Watch Ultra band I have that doesn't seem to show any significant signs of aging is the Ocean band, and I feel like that's just because it's a more durable version of the already durable Sports band. The other two, their closest counterparts on the regular Apple Watch band side, yeah, those would be destroyed, and, well, these have definitely shown some wear. The other two bands aside from the Ocean band are the Alpine Loop and the Trail Loop, and the one I have on here right now is the Alpine Loop, and it stains. It stains not super easily, but when you put it through the wear and tear that I have, yeah, it shows. I mean, for mine personally, there's some oil stains, there's some soot, there's some dirt, and I've tried to wash it off, and it does clean up pretty well, but it doesn't all come out, but that's fine. I don't expect it to clean up completely after I've done what I've done with this. And the titanium loop itself, the little clasp that they use, that has actually scratched up significantly more, even though I thought that it was the same grade of titanium as the watch itself. Evidently not. So the band has shown a bit of its age, and that's fine. It still works. I have no problems with it functionally, and I mentioned this in the previous video I did talking about the Apple Watch, but since it has sort of set loops for your size of wrist, it did vary and took some time for me to get comfortable wearing it because I was working out and losing weight at the time, and so I was at this weird weight where it didn't quite fit in one loop and it was too tight, and then didn't quite fit on the other loop and was too loose. I'm at a weight now where it fits just fine, and so all those complaints have pretty much been put aside. I just had to lose some weight first. The other watch band though, the Trail Loop, that wore out in a way that I wasn't expecting because I love the Sports Loop, which is basically what the Trail Loop is. It's a Velcro style band. You don't have to pick a size, you just strap it on and go. And I love it because of that convenience, but also because it was one of the most durable hook and loop Velcro systems I have ever used. I have an original one from the first gen when they first introduced that style of band, and it still looks brand new. There's no fuzzing, there's no sort of wear and tear on it. It looks great. The Trail Loop, however, actually started to fuzz up. And at first I just kind of considered it an aesthetic annoyance. It was there, but didn't really impede the function of the band, and I put it in the same category as dirts and stains. But then it started to become more of a functional annoyance because it didn't actually let the band grip as well as it used to. So when I would do things like drumming while wearing the band, it would actually feel like it was getting looser and looser because the Velcro was sort of sliding on the hook and loop. That's a problem. And considering that Apple seemed to focus this watch band specifically on runners, that could be a pretty big issue because if you're running and this starts to come loose, it can either fall off, or if it doesn't come completely loose, it can potentially come loose enough that it won't track your heart rate properly, so you'll end your workout and not have a completely accurate reading on your heart rate through the exercise. That is a bit of a problem, and I don't know if Apple has improved that or not, but if I'm going for a Velcro style band now, I'm just going with the sports band. And so that may be something worth looking into if you're looking at buying a used Apple Watch. Because I mean, again, if you're looking to buy a used Apple Watch Ultra, the watch itself may not actually be that worn out, at least aesthetically. But if you're looking at one that has a Trail Loop, you may want to ask about how the actual hook and loop Velcro has worn, because it could be totally fine or it could be completely worn out. My personal suggestion when it comes to the Apple Watch Ultra bands on the used market is Ocean Band first, because it seems to be the most durable, Alpine Loop second, and then Trail Loop third, if you want to get a band that is actually made for the Apple Watch Ultra. The best solution may also be to just look for any other traditional Apple Watch bands sized at 45 millimeters because, well, they'll still fit this Apple Watch. And if you want a Velcro style, maybe look into the sports loops because they seem to be, in my experience, significantly more durable. They're also a bit cheaper, $50 cheaper if you're buying them new. But that's enough about aesthetics. Let's actually dive under the surface and talk about the software, how it's running on this older hardware, and then of course the battery, which is going to be one of the most important things to look at when you're looking at these devices used. When it comes to the software, these are still fully supported. Again, they're only a year old, and Apple has been surprisingly good at keeping the Apple Watches fully supported for a very, very long time. Somewhat to the detriment of the performance of some of the older Apple Watches, but in this case, that's not the case, because this watch runs the latest version of watchOS, and it runs it flawlessly. And actually, the only thing I remember this version of the Apple Watch not being able to do after the new version of the Apple Watch was introduced was use an exclusive watch face that was only for the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which is not the end of the world. And believe me, I have used this thing every single day. I've used it on every workout that I've done. This thing has actually really helped me in terms of improving my general health because never taking it off except to charge it means that I have a really, really good look at my sleep habits, which means they suck. I have all of the different health tracking that I need for my exercises. It has exercises that you can pick from when you go to the gym that really do a good job of accurately reading what you're doing in the gym. And depending on the gym equipment, there are certain types of equipment that actually talk to your Apple Watch to give you the most accurate reading on the workout you did. So that has all been really cool. And from when I bought it to now, it all still functions just fine. So again, going back to buying one of these used, it still runs the latest version of watchOS, and it should be supported for quite a long time, especially considering that things like the older Apple Watch SEs are still supported, even though there are some versions that are old enough that they probably should have been dropped by now. So I wouldn't worry about software if that's a concern for you when it comes to buying one of these used. But the last thing, and what I would consider one of the most important things to keep an eye on when buying one of these used, is the battery life. And that's because these had and still have the longest battery life of any Apple Watch until the second generation of the Ultra came out. In my experience, when the Apple Watch Ultra was new, I would get generally 2 days of battery life when I had no power saver functions enabled. And then if I put it in power saver mode, I would get 3, maybe 3.5 days in a pinch. And then I would throw it on the charger, and with the fast charger, I'd be back up to full charge in about an hour to go again with another 2 days to 3 days, depending on which power mode I picked. But on the used market, the remaining battery life of this watch will really just come down to how the previous owner used it, because I know people who don't use power saver mode, but they don't turn on the always on display. So the battery is not getting worked as hard since the display's off, but it's still being used more than if it was always in power saver mode, which is a way that I've seen people use their watches, where like it's just always in power saver mode, which I've never really understood, but I guess it's an option for you. And then of course there's users like me where it's just all on all the time, always on display, no power saver mode, run it till it's dead, charge it up on the fast charger, and go from there. But even with that heavy use case that I have, my battery is still sitting at 96% of its original life. But even with that reduced battery health, I still get 2 days of battery life with this Apple Watch. The only metric I've seen affected by this lower battery health has been the power saver mode, oddly enough, because I used to get 3 to 3.5 days on low power mode, and now I get 2.5 to 3 days on low power mode. Don't ask me why, but that's the only thing that seems to be affected by the lower battery health. I mean, really, it's kind of crazy that I've only lost 4% of my overall battery health, since I only ever put it in low power mode when I have to. I charge it on a fast charger when I need to, and that's only when the battery is dead. I always have the display on. I wear it pretty much every day, and I have since the day I bought it. And I will wear it for workouts, working on my car, hot, cold, everything. So 4% overall wear for a very heavy user like me probably means that most of the used market, unless you happen to find somebody who is more abusive to their watch than I am, you're probably not going to have to worry about the battery life too much either. Granted, it is not out of the realm of possibility to think that somebody may have been more abusive to their watch than me, so if you have the opportunity to ask the seller how they use the watch, or even better, ask them what the remaining battery health is on the watch, definitely do that so you can be more confident when buying the watch. At the end of the day, the Apple Watch Ultra has aged extremely well, and that really shouldn't be a surprise if you take a step back and look at how over-engineered it is from Apple. So if you're looking at a used one, especially considering the prices now put it a little over the price of an Apple Watch SE, or in really good shape, a little over the price of a brand new Series 9 for a titanium watch with a sapphire display and a cellular option built in, yeah, it seems like a really good deal. So if you can find one, I'd pick one up, because the Series 2 is cool, but if you don't need all the fancy new stuff or the exclusive watch face, Series 1's still worth getting. Just make sure that it's not too scratched up or worn out aesthetically. It has a band that is in decent shape. Software-wise, as long as it's not Apple ID locked, there's no worry there. And of course, make sure that the battery is in good shape. But aside from those things, they're totally worth buying still. Either way, that's been it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe leave a like. If you want to see more like it, definitely subscribe. I've got a bunch of stuff coming down the road, a little sneak peek of what's to come. But aside from that, thank you again for watching. Leave some comments down below about what you think about the Apple Watch Ultra, or if you're looking to buy one. If not, whatever, comments down below. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a good one.